underneath everything, always, no matter what, are the everlasting arms of God, of love, of goodness, even though we may not see it or feel it. It's always there. And we need to make that request. We need to ask for what we want. And when we can't do it by ourselves, to ask for the help and the assistance. Remember my dear friend Rumi, my actual boyfriend Rumi, he's a little old, but he's my boyfriend anyway, said, the secret at dawn, the breezes at dawn have secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You have to ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are walking back and forth across the doorsill where the two worlds meet. The door is wide and open. Don't go back to sleep. I think this morning my message is, are we using this thing called life? Are we using it in the best way possible? Are we here prepared for all that life has given us and all the lessons we are here to learn? It's a big call and a big request. We have to make sure we're ready. And I loved starting with that song because, yes, this is a time when many of us feel confused and overwhelmed. And even though we've had downtime, we're exhausted and tired trying to figure everything out and where things are going and what to do next. And it gets confusing. There's a huge hunger in the world right now. Huge. And it's not, I know there's a lot of food banks out there and a lot of people helping, but this hunger will only be satisfied with spiritual food. I read an article, well, actually it was sent to me from the minister's listserv, and the question was posed in the beginning, and it said, with all the news today of doom and gloom for our world, do you think religion can save humanity? I'm not asking you. You can think about it, ponder over it. But the answer actually came from somebody we love, we've had here, and he's a great influence in our teaching and our world. And he talks about Ernest Holmes, our founder, as one of the contemporary mystics, Reverend Dr. Matthew Fox. And he said, religion itself, I don't think so, because it's shown over time again and again that it's not connected. It's disconnected from the roots of what it is, what our religion was designed to be. The essence of religion is spirituality. Spirituality is a direct experience of God, which is different. We talk about God speaks to us, I'm adding a little bit here, speaks to us through the language of feeling and knowing. That's where the God bumps come from, and that awakening and that intuition. It's a feeling we know. So spirituality is a feeling, but he goes on to, an experience. He goes on to say, an awakening of our deepest consciousness toward the sacred essence will save humanity and our planet. That's why many people are not having to leave their religion. There's a lot of good things in religion, but expanding it like the mystics of every religion did and have done and still do, to mean more, that it's about an experience of life. But you know, we all crave, I don't know how you feel, it depends on where you are, but we all are craving a connection to God or spirit or infinite life or creative potential, whatever you want to call that. But we crave that connection to God whether we know it or not. Because how many times have you in your life wanted something, you just knew something was missing? You didn't feel whole. Do you know what I mean? There was a piece of you that just didn't feel like you needed something. And that missing piece is that sacredness, that knowing, the connection. Sacred, the meaning of sacred is a connection to God. That's what it means. In all life, God is all there is, so that's it. But that's that connection we feel that's awe-inspiring, that really gives us spiritual reverence when we feel the sacred. Now, Alan Watts said, the mundane and the sacred are exactly the same thing. They're just one. Different on that spectrum of essence and energy, but the same thing. And we need to learn that. But know that we crave, our human heart craves a connection with Spirit. We're desiring that. But teaching us how to find it, that's like teaching a fish how to recognize water. You go to the little fish and say, you know what? Water, you need it to live. It's your essence. It's around you. You're surrounded by it. You're filled with it. And it gives you life and supports you. And the fish goes, huh? What? I don't get it. Do you have a book? Can you tell me more? It's like us. We're surrounded by this vibrancy, this presence. It's infinite energy that we can't see, and creative potential or imagination that we can't see. That's what we're surrounded by. Potentiality, we're surrounded by it. Spirit, you can call it, but we don't recognize it, and we wonder, how do we get there? How do we connect? The only way we can really connect with the sacred, we can keep looking for it out there. But Jesus said the kingdom of God is within. And we have to realize that if we're going to really seek the sacred, the first thing we have to do is find it in ourselves. Because everything is made of that spiritual, sacred potential. We've all got it, but we have to take time to commune with Spirit. Begin our day by just connecting to Spirit and knowing it's there, whether I can feel it right now or not. You know, Jesus said, ask and it will be given to you. So if you don't feel it, if you feel disconnected, if you feel incomplete, if you feel like you're not whole, you can say, just hold on to me. I can't do this on my own. How many of you have felt that, especially over this last year and whatever? It's been hard. We can't do it alone. We need each other, and we'll talk about that a little later, but we need that. So ask and it shall be given. Seek and you shall. Knock and the door will be. Yeah, Jesus knew that at the core of his being, that there was a reciprocal universe, and what we put out there, we get back. But we have to do our part. We have to recognize that we have an important part to play. We have to ask. We have to put our desires out there. Now, many of us feel very confused and lost right now, or have been. When you turn on the news and you go, oh, man's inhumanity to man is just crazy. It's not that it hasn't always been there. It has. We're evolving and growing to something better, but we get to see it and hear it and know it. There's so much availability right now that it's in our face. That's the pain in the world. It's there. It's there for us to learn from. But it's not the truth of everything. We need the part. So that's the pain, the mundane. We've got to take the part of the spirituality, the sacred part, and ask, okay, what's mine to do in this? I have to plug in. And beautiful Martine in her red dress right back there was in our last practitioner class, and she got a little 3-word phrase that we all just bought into and we won't forget it. Before we do anything, before you get up in the morning, put your feet on the floor, whatever, plug in. Pause. So you just feel the connection and then proceed. Plug in, pause, proceed. That's what we do. That's how we connect to that spiritual understanding. Now, we've gotten our priorities wrong. We're looking out there to do all the fixing when the priority is in here in the human heart. I'd like to share a quote by Llewellyn Vaughan Lee, a contemporary Sufi mystic. And he says, our heart knows what our mind has forgotten. Our heart knows it. It knows the sacred that exists within all things. And through a deep feeling, we can once again regain the experience of connection and belonging. You see, first and foremost, we have to do the work within ourselves. We have to find Spirit in us, the divine in us. Because, as Jesus again said, the blind cannot lead the blind. You both fall in a ditch. We can't see it out there. until we do our work in here. And it's interesting because we really find spirit, the connection, in the silence of our own self, our own soul, in that silence, in that journey. But let me tell you, when we're journeying into the heart, we're going to bump into all sorts of creepy things. Because thought patterns that we may have picked up, gosh only knows, from our family, from our society, from our culture, from race consciousness, we've picked up these patterns of thought, and they take a grip on our subconscious mind. So they're not always on the top of our mind, but they take a grip and they keep repeating themselves. They keep popping up. You know those thoughts you have. They keep popping up until we change them. And that's the power we've been given, the power to change. The power to take those thoughts that you know aren't good for you, aren't good for other people, just aren't good, and you can change them. It takes work. Nobody said this was going to be easy. We've got the tools, but we have to use them. And once we change those thoughts, we can change our mind. Remember, we just have to really keep checking if we have the tendency, if our rudder's set to move us in the right direction of, let's see, what is God? Wisdom, truth, goodness, beauty, joy, understanding, forgiveness, all those things. Are we headed towards that? Or are we still stuck back on those things that keep us stuck? We have to keep asking ourselves, keep checking. And then when we take that, we open the channel between the head and the heart, the longest distance there is, you know that. Getting there, you got to get through all that stuff. But once you're there, we have to have a two-way conversation with Spirit. Two-way. Now, you know, you can't really have a relationship with someone without a two-way communication. That's not a relationship. If only one person's doing the talking, it's not a relationship. So you need a two-way communion with God. You need to talk, to ask, to listen. Talking can be in prayer. It can be in affirmation. It can be in requests in an affirmative way. That's how we do it. But those are talking to God. Listening is contemplation, being, silence, just being out in nature, at the beach, in the trees, in a garden, in the park, in your yard, wherever it is, and just listening to the messages, and then feel that presence within you. So those are the steps we need to take. First and foremost, recognize that there is this power for good, something greater than we are, for us to use, just like the ocean for the fish. We got to recognize it's there, and then we have to do our part to find it in ourselves, number one. That's what we have to do. We have to feel it there, know it's there. We can't see it in someone else unless we found it within ourselves. And then the next thing we do is recognize this is a reciprocal universe. When we turn to God, God completely turns to us. Now, God, the presence, the energy, that what I called it, that infinite energy and creative potential is always there. It's there, waiting, seeking entrance. It wants an entrance in us. We're the way God life knows itself. We're the unique individuals for that. But it's there waiting for us to open the door. The prodigal son is Ernest Holmes' he said it's the greatest lesson of life. Jesus' parable, the prodigal son, when the son takes all his inheritance, loses it all, he's down on everything, he's living in the pig pen, feeding the pigs, and he remembers, I can return to my father's house. I can plug into Spirit. I can remember there's something more for me. And he turns back to go home, and his father comes running out towards him. And that's what Ernest said, the Father, Spirit. Spirit turns to us when we turn to it. We have to do our part. Now, what happens with this reciprocal relationship is we are here. When I said, are we using this life in the best way we can? Self-expression. Life has given each of us a unique way to be in this world, an individual expression of life. We all have it in different ways. And you and I need to be expressing ourselves in some way, in many different ways. We all have different ways of doing it. If we're not expressing, we're not honoring our God-given our godliness, our goodness. We aren't honoring it. Some people think self-expression makes you selfish. The only way expressing yourself is selfish is if you do it for your good at someone else's expense. Then you want to adjust what you're doing. But this self-expression allows the singers to sing, the musicians to play, the artists to create, the dancers to dance, the business people to have successful businesses, the teachers to teach. That creative expression is there for us, and beautiful beings to have happy families and wonderful relationships. That's what this creative expression is all about. So I want you, and sometimes we need to absolutely refresh ourselves. I certainly don't mean to go out and express all the time. Part of being in the flow of spirit for us too is being in the intake, refreshing yourself, balancing yourself, finding time to refill, and then going out and doing your part in the world. So here comes the harder part. The best and most valuable form of self-expression comes in our relationships and our connection to one another. We've got to build that connection to spirit, but it's about connecting to one another. How hard or where on your priority list, and you don't have to answer out loud because it could be extremely embarrassing, but where on your priority list is finding the sacred in other people? Really looking for it, because sometimes it's really hard to find. Think about it. I think we need to work on that a little bit. But don't blame yourself. Remember, we just have to have the tendency towards the right thing, so we forgive ourselves for our judgments, for not forgiving ourselves and others. And we really focus on that, because look at your relationships, your connections. It doesn't mean we get along with everyone. No way. It means we can see the good in them and keep our distance. That's fine. But how are your relationships? Just ask yourself today, where can I, right now, send better energy, make a call, do something? Because you know, do you ever have those times when something's just eating at you? Nobody else but me? I ask myself, okay, is it mine to let go of? Yeah, oftentimes it is. Is it mine to take action on? Oftentimes it is. What can I do to settle my heart? Because until my heart is settled, not at the expense of someone else, remember, but settling my heart is absolutely my gift to the world, your gift to the world. If my heart's unsettled, then I'm not doing my part. Because when our heart is settled and our mind is awakened, we bring light into a darkened room. That's what we do. We get to be that person that does that. Mark Nepo, who's another modern-day contemporary mystic, says, the life of expression is the tuning fork by which we find our way to the sacred. And so it comes through the work we do in the world, the creativity we give the world, the connections we make in the world. That's our tuning fork to the sacred. Well, how are you doing? How am I doing? Think of how you're doing. Where can I tune up a little better to this world in which we live, so I can do a little bit better job in how I show up? So we need to remember that life holds nothing at all against us, ever. Life is always for us, no matter what. Some of our experiences are tough and difficult, but life is always, always for us. It desires our good, and here's its goal for us. It just wants us to play this game of life in the way it's meant to be played, with unity and cooperation, and absolutely with love. So, since life is not a spectator sport, I'm going to close today by asking you to stand up. I want to make sure you're plugged in, okay? And we've said this before, but I love this. I heard this, I think, my first time I went to a religious science church in Redondo Beach. I don't even want to say how many years ago. And I heard this, and I've never forgotten it because it was profound, and it woke me up at the time. So just repeat after me. I'm alive. I'm alert. I'm enthusiastic. I feel good. I look good. I am good. And I'm getting better all the time. It's so true. I love it. Give yourselves a hand. I love you all. Thank you for being in this within me. We're making the world better right here and right now, and so it is. Love you all.